Hi guys, Brad Griggs from Canine Services today with another blog post, and oddly enough this blog post talks about another blog post. One of my friends, Mark Singer over in South Australia, Mark runs Adelaide Canine Training. You see his name up here. If you Google that, you'll find Mark. Mark put out a blog during the week that related to the way he chose to apply an e-collar to a German Shepherd that had been displaying obsessive compulsive behaviours. Now, I'm not interested in having a debate about whether you personally believe that an e-collar has a place in the training of an individual dog or indeed in training at all. I don't care whether you are a cynopraxic trainer that listens to all the science, or whether you're a trainer that chooses to subscribe to an ideology such as purely positive or force-free. That doesn't concern me in this blog post. But what I am going to talk about is the success that Mark has. Now, that success was marked, as you'll see in Mark's blog post, and I'll put the details beneath this video so that you can click on it and go to the link yourself and read the whole thing, because I cannot do it justice in a short post like this. But the owners were sending Mark messages stating that the dog was much calmer and was not displaying this behaviour as a result of Mark's intervention. Now, Mark will tell you, and I've spoken to Mark about this, and Mark will tell you that there is much more work to be done with that dog. And he does not claim that he has fixed anything with the dog, but he certainly introduced something to the mix that has had a profound effect on the dog, and we need to look at why. So this dog had had extensive previous interaction with a trainer that would identify themselves as positive only, a Delta Society type trainer. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate around that, but what I am going to say is that approach didn't wind up providing a result that was as complete as it could have been for that family and that dog, okay? So then Mark was introduced. Now Mark, he's a colourful guy. He is ex-military. He's certainly not scared. In fact, he revels in the opposition. He's quite hated by the positive only trainers, he calls them, purely positive force-free ideologues. So Mark comes in, and knowing the background, he's done what he considers sufficient examination, and he considers that he has considered that an e-collar is a smart way to start to deal with this, okay? He's a good dog trainer with 34 odd years experience too, I might add. So he introduces the e-collar, and lo and behold, over the course of 2 hours, with the introduction of some unpleasant feeling to the dog when it starts to chase its tail, because when it gets aroused, its tail spins, it chases its tail, that drops off, and the dog goes and lies down at the owner's feet, for example. It behoves us to ask why that works, and I would argue that that doesn't work for that dog so well and so profoundly in that one session just because an e-collar was used. I would argue that when the dog's primary mechanism for coping, when it becomes highly aroused, when that mechanism is tail chasing, it makes the dog feel better. He learns to cope with that level of arousal in his head by acting out physically. When the joy of that was, when the feeling of relief that that offers the dog was affected by the application of the e-collar, the dog already had other things in its repertoire that it could choose, that it had patiently been taught as alternatives. So, one thing that we can say for sure, no matter which side of the dog training political spectrum you're on and what you identify yourself as, it's highly likely, no, it's not certain, But it's highly likely that the reason that this dog had that type of success is because someone had patiently taught it alternatives to what it was doing. Sure, motivation's relative, and so the dog still chose to go with what it knew and what made it feel good, and no food treat could compete with that. When the joy was taken out of that behavior for the dog was aware of other behaviors that had previously felt pretty good but not as good, and then the dog has then adopted these behaviors in order to cope. That's what typically happens. That's how dog psychology actually works. It's really, really, really unlikely that without Mark's intervention, that process would have played out and the dog got that result. Because training a dog for action does not train him to abstain from another behavior. At the same time, training him to abstain from that behavior without giving him a viable alternative, trying to teach him that alternative when he's stressed out because his previous coping strategy doesn't work anymore, that's probably not going to work very well either. So, both ends of the dog training spectrum played a role in a great outcome for that dog, and I'll be interested to see the way that that plays out in future blog posts on Mark's site. Okay, but it just goes to show, guys, what science says. You should, in order to pay attention to the whole science, you have to have an open mind and not have a closed mind, right? So an open mind may well have saved this dog. Had the owners not been prepared to consider both ends of the arguments that they were being given, right, then perhaps that dog would have gone untreated and would have continued and would not have had a chance for its lot in life to improve. So, anyway, guys, check out the blog post, go to Mark's site. You'll hear more from us down the track. I'm Brad Griggs. This is Canine Services International. Take care, train hard.